Oh my goodness. All right, you guys ready? Let's do it. So Tyler Larson from Music Is Win said he really liked the Sharpen My Axe videos and asked me, have I ever thought about doing one where the person that's guitar gets done, they can then do a video explaining what it was like to get the guitar. And I thought, well, this would be a really exciting experiment because he's a professional YouTuber that can, you know, actually do a decent video saying, hey, this is what it was like to get this guitar. So you could see the both sides of the coin, what it was like to do it and what it was like to receive it. And I thought this could be fun. And then because of his kind of personality, he said, let's up the ante. He sent me his favorite Paul Reed Smith guitar. Now, if you watch his channel, I'm sure you do, this guitar is pretty infamous. It's in most of the videos. It's a guitar that's been a long friend to him. So you can understand how serious he was to send me a guitar of such importance to him and let me do what I want to it. So let's talk about what we're gonna do to a Paul Reed Smith Core SE245. So how do you improve a guitar that's basically supposed to be one of the best guitars out there? Well, what we're gonna do is come at it this way. This is a 2008 model. I think so, looking at the serial number, sounds about right. 2008 model, and there's been some improvements since then, and I think there's some things that we can do to make the guitar more usable to Tyler. So let's talk about that. Aesthetically, let's go over some aesthetics. I actually like the new Paul Reed Smith lampshade knobs. So we're gonna take his speed knobs off and give him the newer Paul Reed Smith knobs. And I really like the new Paul Reed Smith pickup rings now that they recess the screws into the pickup rings so you don't feel them on your hand. And I love the ivory color over this kind of yellowed color. So we're gonna go ahead and put those on there as well. The bridge posts are a little chewed up, and that's from just being adjusted over time, and they're brass. So we're gonna put new brass ones in from Paul Reed Smith that are shiny new. And believe it or not, we're gonna update his bridge to the newer model bridge. So then, what about electronics? Well, we're gonna go ahead, this guitar currently with SE245 pickups doesn't have coil splitting abilities. And that's really important because to a musician, that gives it a lot of versatility to the instrument. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in some coveted pickups by Paul Reed Smith that have coil splitting ability. I'm gonna put a 5708 in the neck because I think it makes the cleans sound really full and really pronounced. And I think the leads sound smooth and just articulate. But in the bridge, instead of another 5708, we're gonna put a 5909, a slightly hotter pickup than the 5708, just to give it a little bite on the bridge. Now, Paul Reed Smith offers those pickups in sets, so you can get 5909s or 5708, but never a mixed pair like this. So I really think combination of everything else with Tyler's new electronics, I think we're gonna give him a guitar that just does everything he needs it to be. Last, he has Kluson tuning keys. These came standard with the Paul Reed Smith SE245. And although they're really good tuning keys, like his other Paul Reed Smiths that have locking keys, these take a little longer to restring because you have to wind them. So I'm going to add Kluson locking keys. Now, the reason I'm not going to switch from Kluson to PRS is because these Kluson keys have been on this guitar for a while, and the footprints may have indented into the actual finish or have maybe shadowed the finish. So I'm afraid that if we change tuning keys, there'll be halos of these old ones. They're pretty good keys. If we put the same ones on with locking ability, I think what we did is we're just gonna keep it the way it is and give him the ability to restring faster. All of these things I think will make the guitar a much superior instrument and make it fun. And what's great about this video is after you're done watching this, you'll be able to see Tyler do his review of getting the guitar.
So we're gonna put all of this stuff in this guitar. So I wanna go over a couple of things that are important. The first thing I want to tell you is it has these Kluson tuning keys and they're kind of loose and rattly. I really didn't like them. So we're going to go with these new Kluson keys. They're actually by Kluson and they are locking keys. So if you're familiar with a locking key, they have a mechanism in which you just turn it and you don't have to put wraps on the string. Other thing I like is they have a thicker, stronger shaft, and they have a set screw so you can actually tighten that or loosen it to make the tuning key feel more comfortable to what you like to use. Where this is just kind of a set it and forget it, kind of an old style Kluson key. His pickups, we're going to now use the, this is the 5708 in the neck and the 5909 in the bridge. So that's a custom set. And as far as I know, I've never seen anybody use that before. Not in a production guitar, that's for sure. I want to thank Gene and everybody at PRS because they're sponsoring this video and they supplied all of this amazing stuff so that we could do this video. The only thing they didn't supply is this pure tone output jack. And even though the Switchcraft jack that's in the guitar is great, I really, really like these output jacks. So I wanted to use it. So I talked to a Pure Tone and asked them if they were willing to sponsor these videos, and they are. So they are gonna be the output jack we use for almost every guitar. These are what I use. What I love about them is they fixed a problem that you always see with an output jack. So when you take your cable and stick it in your output jack, you can hear how it double clicked. It's really strong, and it's touching it from 360 degrees of contact. So there's something putting pressure on every side of this guitar cable. So it makes it strong, it makes it really feel like it's in the guitar, and it's less likely to be damaged through kind of like the pressure that happens with cables. So a really impressive jack, so I just wanna thank everybody for that. The only thing that we're using today that's not from a sponsor, which is PRS and Pure Tone, is the Kluson keys. Those we purchased ourselves. But everything else, I wanna thank those manufacturers again. So let's talk about some cosmetic things we're gonna do. First thing that we're not gonna show you is he had some Gorilla Glue on the front of the guitar. As far as I know, he said it was Gorilla Glue. I'm not sure what kind of glue it was, but it was glue on the guitar, and I've removed that. I'm not gonna show you how I did that. It's something that I'm not comfortable showing everybody at this point in a quick part of the video. Maybe that's a separate video to do that, but that has been removed. So. Now the first thing I wanted to do, like I said, was change his pickup rings. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but I really like, if you see how the screw is right here. So I like how the new ones are recessed, and so it makes the screw flush, so it doesn't kind of touch your hand. It feels smooth, it's out of the way. But more importantly, I like that they've updated the color. See, the new color is like a bone color. It's like a cream instead of this yellowed kind of color that they used to use. So again, I think it's cosmetically a nice improvement. Now the first thing I want to do is get rid of these studs. As you saw earlier in the video, they're kind of chewed up. Every guitar player seems to have these really scuffed up, damaged slugs, these posts. And they're chewed because they're using the wrong kind of screwdriver. There are some tools that StewMac has that are really cool. I've been thinking about getting one, but right now what I use is a really oversized flathead screwdriver that fits in that slot. Just make sure the screwdriver fits in the slot. In today's day and age where you can go to Harbor Freight or anywhere and get yourself a screwdriver for a couple bucks, might as well do that, because everybody kind of knows what I'm talking about. These barbs kind of poke your hand. They don't feel really good. You know, it's just not pleasant. So we're gonna go ahead and replace those with new ones. We're gonna give him a new bridge. So here's his current bridge. It's made of aluminum or aluminum, whatever you wanna call it. There it is. And we're gonna go with the newer PRS bridge that has the individual saddles that are brass. And what I think is gonna be great about that is it's gonna help us fine tune the intonation on the guitar. And I think it's gonna give him some more sustain because there's more weight here. Let's go ahead and just take it all apart. So I'm not sure if this is ever gonna come up with you guys, but when you have these push-pull pots, there is this tab here. And what that's for is that some manufacturers, when they install these into pick guards and all kinds of things, they drill a hole, or they have a preset hole for this to stick into, so it kind of makes it faster for assembly, just goes right there and it locks it into place. But we're not gonna have that issue, so you just have to go ahead and cut that off. So I just go ahead and just snip it right off. That works perfectly. You don't have to grind it or anything. It's a soft metal. You just gotta kind of squeeze a little harder. Make sure you use protective eyewear, but other than that, that solves that problem. So in case you guys are ever worried about that, please do not leave those in there, because what happens is when you put these in, they'll be crooked and they'll eventually break. They just can't take the angle, so especially when you crank them down. So definitely remove that. Now what we have to do now is, since we're putting a new potentiometer that wasn't in there before, we need to see what depth works, because these are a longer shaft than the original ones, as we can see right there. So we're gonna go ahead and make sure that this is the same height. So how we're gonna do that is, they come with a nut. We'll go ahead and just put that on. And in my experience, usually just taking the nut all the way down to the bottom is usually the perfect amount, but we'll double check that. Sometimes these are off just a little bit. And then so what you now do is you wanna, instead of taking them flush like that, take it down to the nut, and look at that, it's perfect. That's why when you get the longer ones like this, you'll notice they have an extra nut. This one came with two. That's what that's for. The best thing about this, if you're doing this, if you're deciding to upgrade from the standard potentiometers to these push-pulls, these aren't gonna be any different in the way that they operate for the actual electronics. So in other words, however this was soldered up, that's how you're gonna stick with it. So we're gonna go ahead and have this this prong soldered to the casing. We're gonna use the center tab to solder the capacitor. I don't know, I'm having trouble saying that. And leave that alone. That's the bottom part. Then we'll use the secondary piece of these push pulls to do the coil split. A coil split is when we're going to take a humbucker like this. We're going to turn off one of the coils. In other words, defeat it. So we now essentially have a single coil, right? It's a coil split. We're splitting the coils and using one of them. Make sure you always grab the correct side of the soldering gun. So a quick tip when soldering is to definitely invest in some kind of tool that lets you hold the components for you. This I bought at Harbor Freight for, I don't know, a couple dollars. So you can find these very inexpensively. I have a bunch of them, in fact, because they were inexpensive. So this is a definitely important tool. So first, have that. Now, what we're gonna show you today is I'm gonna show you real quick how to solder what I think is one of the hardest things to solder, which is a braided wire pickup. So if you're not familiar with what a braided wire pickup is it's a pickup like a vintage style pickup that has two wires, to a ground and a hot, and the ground is the outer sleeve, which is this metal braided wire, and then internally you have the hot. Now, the reason I say it's one of the hardest is because a lot of times I see a really disaster with big globs of solder, big mess every time I see in there. So what I'm going to show you is how to solder it onto a volume potentiometer. And so here we go. The first thing I want you to do is make sure you ten both sides of the things that are being connected. So ten the wire, and then also ten the component that you're going to be soldering to. That's very important. Now, on a soldering gun, it is very important to use a good one. Now, the one I use is digital, and it lets me set the temperature. Now, temperature is a tricky thing because sometimes you don't know what to set the temperature to. I like to set my temperature to about 700 degrees. So some people think that's a little too hot, some people think that's just right. Everybody's got a different opinion on this. There's no real set standards for this. You've got to really find your rhythm when it comes to soldering because of the fact that you're worried about burning out the components. Now, the soldering gun, make sure your tip is always clean and it's also tinned. So you want to make sure you tin your tip, like so, and then go ahead and just wipe it off. There you go, just like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to now tin the wire. So here's what you're going to want to do when wiring this thing. Set the length, kind of figure out how it's going to line up right there with this part. Okay, like so. And what you'll do now is just go ahead and heat this part up and run it right through the hole. Okay? And again, you don't want to burn this component up. So you want to make sure that you're not superheating this part. Okay. Now what we have to do is tin the part. Okay? And really, there's no particular order I usually go in, but sometimes I already would have done that. Right here, we're just gonna go ahead and just do that. Just put a good, nice, shiny piece of solder on there. Now, I've had it where some potentiometers, the solder won't stick, and so in that case, I take a nice piece of sandpaper and I rough up that spot so it'll grip. Now, if you notice, I went ahead and put some solder on the wire itself. I'm gonna show you that real quick, just right here, so you can go. There you go. And then now we're gonna do, heat the potentiometer first, heat that up, solder it first, and bring the wire down to it. And then, there you go. Super, super easy. Now you have a good, strong connection. It's shiny, it works, it doesn't have too much solder, and that's your quick little solder tip. Literally, no pun intended. Okay, so let's start assembling the pickups. On these pickup frames, they have a part on them that grabs the spring. Basically helps the spring stay in place when you're putting it together. Pickup frame, aha! This is what I'm talking about, see? The spring goes like that, look at that. I mean, who does that? These are those things that I talk about, and a lot of YouTubers will talk about, a lot of gear guys will talk about Paul Reed Smith and these little things that they do. And some people will say, hey, you know, who cares? But the point of this isn't that you need this tab to hold the spring. That's definitely not the point. The point is is that if they thought of that, if they, they sat in an office one day and they thought, how can I make this better? Doesn't that make you feel a little better when you make a purchase from a company who's just like, hey, you know what? Why don't we recess the screws so they don't poke somebody's hand? And why don't we put a tab so that holds the spring so that when the employees put it together or if somebody changes pickups later or has to get into their pickups, it's easier. Like I mentioned before, when I said that he had some glue and we removed it, now there's also on this guitar, because he plays it a lot, there's a lot of, kind of those fine scratches and stuff. And I've talked about this before, but this is a product I really like that I've used for a while. It's the Swirl Remover Polish by Stu Mac. I really, really like it. It's super, super easy to use. You just shake it and put it, I use microfiber cloths. You just put a little on the microfiber cloth. A dab would do you, kind of so to speak. There it is, and just kind of spread it around that spot. And just go ahead and, with medium force, just go ahead and work it in. And it's kind of like on a buffing compound, you're gonna wanna, just work it in and then buff it off with a clean spot on the rag. And you don't have to let it set. At least I don't let it set. And then I take a dry part of the cloth and now I do a swirling action. I don't know, never looked to see if that's what it wants you to do. I've been using this for so long that it's been a while since I've actually read the actual instructions, but I'm pretty sure I'm still doing it the way I was supposed to. And again, just to kind of really give it a good amount of pressure when you do it, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It just really minimalizes those scratches. It really makes the instrument look really nice, and it doesn't leave like a wax smooth coat like when you're waxing something and you feel it like feels really soft. It doesn't really do that. It kind of feels still like the guitar, but it feels very clean. Yeah, very, very nice. And again, just kind of work that in, and I'll work it over the entire guitar. I'll do the neck as well. Everything that has some swirl marks and scratches. These are the fret guards I use from Stu Mac. I like them, and a whole lot, in fact. But you can also use painter's tape. I wouldn't use any other kind of tape. And you can use steel wool. However, you want to make sure you tape off all of the pickups and everything like that. I use Micro Mesh 8000. What I want to show you is just, here's a fret, the way it looks. You can see that right now. And let's go ahead and polish that up. Now, we're not crown and level his frets. Like I said, he's got small divots, but none of them are causing dead spots or issues. And I'm a fond believer that you should polish your frets as much as you can. One, look at the difference. I mean, it's not aesthetically, it's the main thing is that when you're bending, you'll notice like there's less friction, And I think that's what sometimes people get caught up on when you try a new guitar and you're like, man, this plays great. It's because your old guitar is kind of crusted up a little bit. It's also why when you play inexpensive guitars and they don't feel so great, it's because the frets are never highly polished. Again, we're not taking any material off, we're just taking off the dirt and grime. And like I said, if you don't have the moolah, the money for the Stu Mac products, which I totally understand, I use Stu Mac because there's an expense to Stu Mac products, but there's also an expense to getting things wrong. You don't want to mess up Tyler Larson's favorite guitar, is what I'm saying. So I use always the right stuff. But again, there's nothing wrong with just some steel wool. You use the finest grade steel wool there is. Make sure you tape off anything that can magnetically grab that stuff. And if there's any cracks or crevices where that stuff could fall into, I would always painter's tape that up as well. So let's go ahead and clean this fretboard. I'm gonna go ahead and use some fretboard conditioner. In this case, I'm going to use some lizard spit, and that's another fretboard conditioner I like. I use different fretboard conditioners for different situations. He plays this guitar often, and you can tell. So it's not that it's dirty, it's just that it's used. He's actually playing this guitar. So sometimes fretboards are dry, and that's, and you want to maybe hydrate them a little bit. But in this case, his fretboard's not dry. It's just, he's playing and there's sweat and grime, and it's just, from playing. This lizard spit is like an orange oil, and I find it really is really good for cleaning. And in this case, on the other videos I did, the guitars were kind of new or not used as heavy, and this guitar is definitely, like I said, been played. So yeah, look at that. Voila, a new neck. I didn't replace the three-way switch, and I'm not gonna, but we are gonna clean it. So I'm gonna use some DeoxIT. And what I do is come from the top, just put the knob to the side, and just a little in there. It'll go right through to the bottom. It'll leak out to the bottom of the guitar, and just work it around. And same thing as before, make sure you get in there a little bit, and go ahead and just work that back and forth. Works great. It's cleaned out, and so any issues that he may or may not have had, I didn't notice anyone was playing it. But it's my theory is if you open up a guitar for any reason, whether it's a restring or whatever, if you have a guitar, you might as well clean everything and service it. So let's do the tuning keys first. Go ahead and move that like so. This should be straightforward. And exactly like I predicted, 100%. Nothing feels better than when you make an educated guess and the guess comes true. What I want to show you exactly what I was talking about. If you see right there, you can see what I was talking about. The outlines of those tuning keys are imprinted on the headstock, and they're actually in there. Those are cut. Hear that clicking? That's my fingernail going into the cut. So if I went with another brand of tuning keys or anything like that, it would be almost impossible to cover up those cut marks. So that's why we went with these, and look at this. It's gonna line up and cover. It's exactly like the original. You see how amazing this is. Now, there's probably a question there. There's somebody right now asking how much different weight are they? It's minimal. I mean, I could weigh them, I could on the scale, but I mean, I can already feel like, I mean, these are a little heavier, but you wouldn't notice. There's just no way. Okay, look at that. So aesthetically great. Locking keys now, awesome. All right, so we'll put the strings on. Now, Mr. Larson uses Elixir OptiWebs. So that's what we're putting on the guitar. And you'll see, man, restringing this thing is gonna be a beaut. Now we still have to set the intonation. We'll do that. I like it with this new bridge. I hope he does too. Elixir. Great tone, long life, anti-rust plain steel. Look at that. Now it says great tone, long life. Does it mean if you have great tone, you'll have a long life? So the bridge is installed, the pickups are installed, knobs are installed, all the electronics are installed, tuning keys installed. The guitar looks beautiful. A couple things I want to note that I thought were really cool. I really love how Paul Reed Smith actually etches the name of the pickups in the pickups. In the neck pickup, it says 5708, it's etched in there, and on the bridge, it says 5909. It's just really nice. I wish more companies would kind of etch the name of the pickup so you know what's in the guitar. So I want to do something a little special for Tyler, and I noticed that he uses Dunlop strap locks right here, and I really like them. Basically how it works is this mechanism goes right in there, you secure your strap. However, sometimes musicians get to the gig and they forgot the strap. Somebody took it out of the case, something happened. And now you cannot, because of the way it's designed, you cannot use another strap. You have to have somebody with the locking mechanism. So I'm installing, and I'll do both sides, what's called the Dunlop dual design strap lock. It works the same way. So when he gets this home, the strap will work the same way, right? But it has the end that is just like a normal strap button, so he can put a normal strap on there. So he loses nothing. So let's see how she sounds. Well, here it is, a very beautiful Paul Reed Smith guitar. So I'll do some sound samples. I'd like to point out again that if you look in the link in description down below, you'll be able to click and go to Tyler Larson's review of this guitar, and that will probably give you a much better sound sample of how it sounds now. And something else to point out, because I mentioned I was going to do 10 episodes of Sharpen My Axe. This is kind of like a bonus episode. This is something just to kick off the series to be fun. And so I thought that would be cool. I'd like to let everybody know that this isn't going to take a spot in the 10 slots. This is just extra for everyone to enjoy. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just give some basic sound samples so you can hear the before and the after of the pickups.
Well, there you go. I hope you enjoyed the video and had a good time and maybe even learned something. I really want to thank Tyler Larson for sending out this guitar. If you guys don't understand what a big deal it is for a guitar player to send their favorite instrument to somebody, ship it across the country and let them just do whatever they want to it, please understand, I think that was a really cool thing him to do, and I want to thank him again immensely for that. And of course, thank all of you, especially for subscribing and watching these videos. You're the reason I do this, so again, thank you guys so much. And until next time, know your gear.